Okay, hello, this is just a quick update to show you guys, there's a couple of you, I can see that pretty good, to show you guys the sort of basic stuff we did to the pinch pots after they had stiffened up a little bit. So the first one is this one here, and it's all the way dry. You can see that it's got this whiter surface than the others. So the only thing you can do with this is to finish it, right? And how we finish these things is we use this metal tool that's called a rib. It's smooth and got a sharp edge. Be careful, don't cut yourself. And then you take and you flex it around your thumb so there's some spring to it like that. And you pull it toward yourself and you can get rid of all the lumps. This is the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking for in your finished work. That you completely got rid of all the lumps and dips in your piece. It's one of those jobs that can seem kind of tedious at first, but it's a fine thing to do in front of Netflix. You kind of work your way around here as methodically as you can and get rid of all the dents and the bumps. Right? So you can see there's a patch there that's nicer than the rest of it, less lumpy. I'm going to continue that a little bit more. It's easier for you physically to pull the tool toward yourself than go away from you because our musculature kind of goes that direction better. You know, it's the difference between like going that way and this way. You're much stronger at grabbing. So here we go. We're just kind of scraping away all the high spots. Okay, so you can see how that's really different than over here where it's like the moon or something. Okay, the same is true for the lip. Like the lip on this guy is all bumpy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rehabilitate that lip. First of all, I'm going to use the flat side of the tool instead of the round one that I was using. And then I'm going to drag it across here to kind of make the edge of the lip a little nicer, a little more uniform. And then I'll go around the side and you can see there's like a lump here and a lump here. And I'll work those particular lumps out so that lip can become much closer to the same thickness all the way around. Getting another lump there. You can't just, go across here and use it as this broad sweeping move. You got to kind of concentrate on the bad spots. Okay. Then what I'll do is use the flat edge on the inside as well to kind of work over the places that need to be worked over. Right? It's a round object, so the places that make it look flat are the parts that need to be taken away. Okay. So then you can kind of tidy up the edges. And you can see how this little patch here looks nicer than the rest of this nonsense, right? So that's how we finish a dry thing, but it's also how we finish the more wet things as well. There'll be a different texture to it for sure as you're doing it. You'll really notice it's different. You can be super in control on dry stuff, but you have to be a little more careful, show a little finesse when you're working on the wet stuff. Okay, so that's what you're going to do to the dry ones and the wet ones. The wet ones finish a little differently, like I was saying. So, same kind of thing. I'm kind of pulling it toward myself, but every time I do, it takes some clay with it. The tool takes some clay with it. And I have to wipe it off periodically so that I don't just smear it back on when I go back to the piece. And you'll end up with a ton of these little things here, and just every once in a while you want to scrape them up. Same thing with the dust. That powder, it's so tempting to just blow it off, but it'll get into everything. So we just kind of, scoot it around and kind of collect it. Okay, so you can see here where this part is got these little scratches in it. Those little scratches are irrelevant, but it's gotten rid of all the lumps that you can see in the other places here, right? So we want to see all of these finished like that, all your pinch pots. Okay, next thing. So this one is, wet enough to still be a little flexible. So what we're going to do is we're going to scratch and attach a piece of clay on here. All right. So you'll be using the tool that has a pointy thing, looks like a needle comes off of it. You'll go in there and you'll scratch the lip. And here we are scratching. Takes a long time, it can be a little tedious, but this is the way we do it. If you do a bad job at scratching, your pieces will come apart, and nobody wants that. Right, so scratching and being patient. That's what we're doing here. Okay, so once you get it all scratched up, what you're going to do is get a little water on a paintbrush and touch the edge with that water. And what happens is it gets sucked into the cracks and makes those cracks moist so that they can take the new clay, that it'll stick to them, right? So cutting it up, what it does is it makes the clay not just moist, but it also opens up the clay in a little ways to the moisture part inside of the clay. Okay, so we'll let this set for a second, and I'm going to take and roll out a coil, a bigger one. I'm just kind of squishing it together with my hands. And rolling out a coil, kind of a thick one, because I want to grow the overall piece with this. So we'll take this and we'll put it on here, kind of make sure it's nailed on there pretty good. The clay that is right out of the bag does not need to be scratched because it's supple and wet enough. Okay, so we get that guy all the way around, and we're pretty sure it's stuck pretty well on there. And then what we can do is we can take and pinch it some more, just like we were doing. And you can see how we're gaining a bunch of height there. This is how we add on to the pinch pots. Right, so I'm functionally making this piece larger by adding on there. And I could add another one on there and make it bigger and bigger and bigger until it's, you know, as big as a house if we had enough room and clay. So the other thing we do is we kind of blend the edge of the clay that I added away a little bit. Just kind of quiet that down. If you do this on clay that's too close to dry, it'll just fall off. If you try and put it on dry clay, it'll just, you know, completely fall off. Because the dry clay has already shrunk where the water's gone away. But the wet clay will still shrink. And so if one shrinks and the other one doesn't, you get a big crack. Okay? So here I am, I'm kind of blending some of this away. I can do that because this pot's still pretty wet. If it was a drier pot, I would need to have to scratch across it so that it was attached. Right? These joints are like the most important thing. Otherwise your pot will fall apart and nobody wants that for you. Okay. So that's attaching a coil to an already existing pinch pot. You can see that, you know, this one kind of started off life smaller and it got added to like that. Okay, so that's another one down. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach two things that are a little drier together, right? Because if you remember, I had you cover things up, you know, with a piece of plastic. Imagine this is plastic. I covered some of them up while they are still on a piece of wood. I covered some of them up so they're covered on the top and the bottom. And then a few of them I left out so that they could dry completely. You need to kind of get the experience of all three. Okay, so now these guys, I'm going to connect these together. So it's the same kind of deal. Kind of thinking about how I'm going to stick these together. Probably something like that. And I'm going to scratch across here. The same way I did before. The more thorough you are, the better your attachments will be. It's super disappointing for everybody when the attachments fail. Really want to get in there and tear it up. When you're doing your scratches, you want to do it with something that's pretty sharp. Like, I got this needle tool, but I also have a fork that can speed things up. So this is a pickle fork, and the tines are very sharp. You can sometimes find forks that are really sharp, and that speeds things up because I've got 3 times the scratchers there. And then of course we're going to drop a little water in here. The little scratches suck water in like capillary action, like paper towels pick up water. Right? The little scratches just kind of invite the water in. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put these together. Oh yeah, we're going to do it this way. Put these together and give it a couple of very small twists. So they're like kind of, you know, kiss together in this way, kind of smooch together there, right? So then these guys are together. Now this clay is a little drier than the clay I was using here, right? So what I have to do is I have to go around the outside here and scratch this up a little bit and put a coil around it because the clay is drier. The drier the clay, the more scratching and the more effort you have to put in to making it stick together. And the skills that you're learning on these couple of exercises, we're going to be using these over and over. This is like the normal way that we do business. There's very little just squishing stuff together. Okay, so I've got the scratches going around the outside there. And I'm going to take a little more clay. Not very much though, because I don't want to put a huge coil on there. So we'll take this piece of clay and roll it out so it's pretty skinny. and then throw it around the outside and get it blended in. Okay. So half of it will go one direction, and half of it will go the other direction. All right? And you can see how this is all sort of stuck together now. So you could go back and take and use the tools to kind of smooth it out like we did on the others. All right? So you're going to attach a lip to one of the pots to grow it larger. You're going to attach two together. Of course I would blend the rest of it. I'm just, showing you and don't want to bore you to death. Right? You're going to do this kind of finishing to all of the pinch pots, right? So that we have the nice spot, not the craters of the moon kind of thing. And then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to add texture to just do a few of them. So texture is not decoration. Like if I took this tool and just put a couple of stripes across here, that really doesn't change the texture of this whole thing. It just looks like, well, there's some trenches dug into a flat surface. No, what we want to do when we make texture is we want to tear it up so much that it doesn't look flat anymore. And it can be like fluffy scratch marks like this. Where it starts to look like the outside of a coconut rather than, a flat surface. Or you can make, obsessive little pokey marks until there's so many pokes that the surface doesn't look flat anymore. Or you can use any number of tools to figure out ways to make new kinds of texture. So here, if I do this over and over and over directionally, we can make a kind of a look like scales, like the way they layer up on one another, right? Okay, so your job is to scratch and attach a coil onto a pinch pot and grow it out. Another job is to clean up your pots, the dry ones, the medium ones, and the wetter ones, all of them. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is I want you to get used to the differences in the texture and hardness of the clay. And then the third thing is you're going to just take a couple of these guys from the middle, the sort of wet and sort of dry ones, and scratch and attach them together, get a coil on there, get it blended in. Okay? And that's it. That's what you do with pinch pots.